what's the word? The little thingy-majiggy. Hey y'all, it's Bowen. Welcome back to my channel. I am a registered dietitian and homemaker. One of the goals of my channel is to help bridge the gap between knowing what is healthy and acquiring those skills to be able to do it. So I try to teach you the skills to do that on my channel. Today I am teaching you how to make beef bone broth from scratch using an Instant Pot. You could adapt this recipe to cooking it on your stove top if you need to, if you don't have an Instant Pot. I will say I've been making bone broth for 12, 13 years, and the Instant Pot is a game changer. It makes it so much easier, so much faster, and it turns out awesome every time. I love my Instant Pot. I think it works really, really great for bone broth. That is what I pretty much primarily use it for. So let's get started with how do you make bone broth. So beef bone broth is, in my opinion, a little more complex than making chicken broth. Chicken broth is pretty straightforward. Cows are large animals with a variety of types of bones. I have learned from fails and successes that a good bone broth is made with a variety of bones, not just one type of bone from the cow. This is where it gets a little complicated. When you try to go buy soup bones from a butcher or a local farm, usually you get a massive bag of all the same types of bones. And a lot of times it's marrow bones, a lot of times it's meaty bones, and they all kind of consider soup bones something different, I've learned. However, you really do want that variety. They're not sold in variety packs. I have not found a variety pack of beef bones. That would be amazing. But after talking to some local farmers, I think it's more of a regulations thing, that they have only certain ways that they can package things. That's why when you buy chicken feet from a local farm, you get like an entire massive bag. You don't just get like 3 chicken feet, you get a whole bag. So beef bones are similar in that you get a whole big bag of this one type of bone. If you are butchering the animal and you have more control, then I would make a variety pack because it would make it a lot more simple. So let's get into the different types of bones so I can kind of clarify what I'm talking about here. Some of the most popular soup bones look similar to this. They have a lot of meat on them. The meat can be used. We use it for making like shredded tacos, or my husband, he eats pretty much anything, so he'll eat it. But the meaty bones often look like this. So meaty bones are great, but they don't have a lot of collagen. So they'll make a really rich, meaty tasting broth, but you're not gonna get a lot of collagen from this. So they're great for flavor. Second really good type of bone that's accessible is knuckle bones, and they look kind of something like this. And there's often sometimes a little bit of marrow in there, but they're just very big and they're just huge. And some of them are even bigger than this, but I pulled out a reasonable sized one today. Knuckle bones have a lot of collagen and they're easy to work with, and they're usually relatively easy to find. Marrow bones are also pretty easy to find, and they have the marrow in the middle. Making broth with only marrow bones, in my opinion, is disgusting. I've done it before and it just didn't have the right flavor to me. So there could have been other factors and variables with that, but I find that it's a variety that contributes to a really well tasting and rounded, nutritionally rounded broth. So this is a marrow bone. This is what we're gonna make our broth with today. We're gonna use all 3 of these types of bones. If you can find things like hooves, those make really excellent additions to your bone broth because they're very rich in collagen. So a variety of bones is what I'm gonna use. So the way that I package these myself. So I got a massive bag of these meaty bones. It was like this big, and I just thawed it enough to where I could break it up and then vacuum sealed them individually into about 2 per pack. Same with the knuckle, same with the marrow. I just broke them up enough to where I could individually wrap and freeze them. Now when I go to make my beef bone broth, I grab one of each so that I've got a variety. Now that we figured out, okay, what kind of bones you need, there are some things called aromatics that you can use in your bone broth to contribute to flavor. You may not have all of them on hand, and it's okay. Just use what you have. So what I usually use for my aromatics is bay leaves, whole peppercorns, whole onion. You can leave the skin on and everything. And then garlic and carrots and celery if you have it. I don't have celery today. I will show you how we add these in later. We're not gonna add them in at first. We're gonna cook the bone broth on high pressure for 2 hours in our Instant Pot, and then we're gonna add these aromatics for another 30 minutes. The reason I don't add them at first is because they would turn to complete mush after 2 hours being in the Instant Pot. And 30 minutes is honestly probably pushing it. You could probably do like 15 and you'd still get enough flavor from it. If you don't have an Instant Pot and you're making it on the stove, you want to simmer it as long as you can. Most recipes will say 12 to 24 hours. I always found that 24 hours was just a little unrealistic for me. One, I was afraid to leave my stove on all night. And two, there's less control. If I have a gas stove, and so it's great for cooking and stuff, but sometimes like it was just hard to get that right place of simmering, not boiling, and then not having it sitting still to where it's just, I don't know. It was always really hard to achieve the perfect broth on the stove, in my opinion. Some people also use crock pots. That can be done as well. I'm not super comfortable using a crock pot for personal reasons. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. This is my way. So we're gonna start by roasting the meaty bones. So the meaty bones have to be roasted first. So I have a pan here with parchment paper on it, and I'm just going to put my meaty bones on the pan. I already have the oven preheating to 350 degrees. It seems like this would take a while. It takes no time at all, okay? It takes no time at all for these bones to roast up. So watch them carefully because you don't want them too roasted. Okay, so I've got the meaty bones roasting in my oven at 350 degrees. I set the timer for 5 minutes. I will check them every 5 minutes because I do not want any burning, because that can then contribute to a burnt flavor in my broth. So I recommend checking every 5 minutes. I can't give an exact time that it's going to take because all bones are cut differently. There's different amounts of meat. There's so many factors to it. So watching it closely is really the best tip that I can give. So while that is going, we're going to get started on the next step. So I have my Instant Pot right here, and I'm going to add in the other bones that contain more bones. These are the really bony bones that have lots of collagen. So those bones we want to put in there and add a little bit of apple cider vinegar and let it soak for 30 minutes before we start. This is just a traditional step in making bone broth that is supposed to help start the process of breaking down and releasing some of the minerals. So as you can see, this is one of the categorized as a knuckle bone, and you can see like a knuckle type looking thing there. And that's gonna go in here. Now I'm gonna fill this up to my max fill line. I'm gonna leave, actually I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna fill it up to the max fill line because we're gonna be adding in those 2 large meaty bones in a little bit, and then I'll be overfilled. So I'm just gonna fill it a little bit under and then add some apple cider vinegar. It's important to use purified water. So I would avoid using tap water unless it is filtered. I'm just adding in about 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. Now I'm just gonna let this soak. Once the other bones are finished, we will add that to the pot. Okay, so my meaty bones are now browned. So this is what they look like. There's a nice browning on both sides. You're not trying to fully cook them. You're just trying to get a little bit of browning. So I did one side for about 10 minutes and then I flipped them. And then I did the other side for about 7 minutes. So like I said, I just watch it really closely. This is what I find will happen. You can see it's kind of really dark right there. And too much of that will lead to like a burnt flavor, like I said. So you don't want that. So we are going to put these in with the other bones. These other bones have been soaking in apple cider vinegar water for about 30 minutes. So these are a little bit cooled now. So I'm going to add these. And I am up to my max fill line. Now it's time to put them to cook. I just wanted to show a little close-up of how much water I have in there, so you can see I'm just right under that max fill line. This is not something that is gonna expand like rice or a grain, so that is why you can have it pretty much up to that max fill line. After we do the initial 2-hour cook, we're gonna add more things, so we may have to subtract a little bit of our broth when we add the onions and all the other aromatics. I'm setting the Instant Pot to high pressure for 2 hours, and I will be keeping the steam release handle set to the sealing position. Okay, so we are working on step 1 of cooking our bone broth in the Instant Pot. Once this step is over, I'll bring you back and show you what the next steps are. Once this has cooked for 2 hours and it says off, you want it to naturally release the pressure. So you're gonna keep an eye on the little gauge and wait for it to drop. I'll show you what that looks like as well. You don't wanna force vent your broth because you will spray broth all over your kitchen. So you have to be patient. It sometimes will take 30 to 40 minutes for the pressure to totally release before you can start the next step. So just keep that in mind. All right, y'all, so you can see that the gauge has dropped. And I can now open the Instant Pot, and I am going to add in my aromatics and do part 2 of this broth. Part 2 is just cooking the broth on high pressure for 20 minutes with assorted aromatics to give the broth flavor. This is what it looks like after the broth is fully cooked. So we've done the first round of 2 hours, we've done the second round of 20 minutes. Once that float valve is dropped, again, you can then safely open your Instant Pot. I'm removing all of the big bones out of there. I'll save the marrow and the meat, and we will reuse that in another recipe. All that's left to do is strain the broth. So I'm just using stainless steel strainer, pouring the broth in and just getting out all of the aromatics. You can also run it through a cheesecloth, and if you're going to can your broth, you really should do that. But for my purpose, I don't worry about messing with the cheesecloth when I'm just going to use it in my cooking the next day. Pouring it into a glass jar, so you want to try to cool the broth down as quickly as possible because it is still a food. So I'll pour it into the glass jar and just kind of allow it to stop steaming, and then I'll move it to the fridge to cool overnight. And then I will skim the fat off the next day. Okay, it's the next day, and here's a little jiggle test to show you how gelatinized the broth is. So the fat rises to the top and gets really nice and hard, making it very easy to skim it off. You can reserve it and use it for cooking. Just be mindful if you scoop off any broth or any little chunks of meat with your fat, you need to use it within 5 days. If it's just pure fat, it may last a little bit longer. To be on the safe side though, I would use it up quickly. It tastes really good in cooking. So I am automatically going to pour some of this broth into some glass containers, and it's going to go in the freezer because I normally don't go through the entire half-gallon jar. So within a good time frame. So I'm going to go ahead and freeze some for other recipes. Thank you again so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something. Please give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, please subscribe. If you have questions, comment. Thank you again, and I will see you in the next video.